I've been lately talking about how the ego pollutes and poisons pretty much everything that we do. And being at the receiving end of emotional abuse is no exception to that. When we are victims of abuse, the situation is too tempting for the ego not to corrupt into something that it is not. And so the ego, in an attempt to make itself feel relevant, special, and in fact valid, will appropriate the victim identity. And it'll keep us stuck there as opposed to creating a momentum for real healing to happen. This channel is Meditation Amsterdam. My name is Pablo, and I want to share a thought about how our egoic mode of mind becomes a real hindrance when we are at the receiving end of emotional abuse. So the essence of the message is that victimhood has a payoff for the ego. And if this wasn't the case, we would follow our own best interest and essentially just get healed as quickly as possible. What I see around on YouTube tells me that the story is slightly different than that. There are myriads of very popular channels now which are dedicated to essentially dissecting and classifying all the different types of narcissists that there are out there. You know, I mean, there are so many types of narcissists now that I think it's enough to make an ornithologist feel jealous. And there's also lists about, you know, what the narcissist thinks about sick people, what they think about, I don't know, sunny afternoons, or how they use dental floss. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on about the attitudes, traits, types, and tactics of a narcissist, and the kind of things that they do to make our life difficult. And I would like to propose that even though some of this information has practical value to it, that our orientation, if our only concern was to be healed and, God forbid, get on with our lives, would be to simply understand what it is that we need to do within ourselves to heal our essential traumas and our codependent orientation of mind, so that we can just live free, autonomous, and fulfilling lives. That in itself already is quite a difficult task, but it is made even more difficult by the fact that the ego does not necessarily want to go in that direction, because victimhood as an identity has a lot of payoffs. The obvious and superficial payoffs of being a victim is garnering attention, perhaps garnering sympathy, and being able to justify many hang-ups and unresolved things that you have about yourself, because now you are a victim, and that grants you a certain type of special status in the mind of your own ego. And even though those are fairly obvious, sometimes they are not even well known by people who have been abused. At the more obscure side of the payoff of victimhood identity is the payoff of any identity, which is knowing who or what you are. We've spoken about how our mind finds it very uncomfortable to be in an existential void of not knowing who it is and not knowing what life is about, or not knowing what to do. And in order to dampen or reduce the discomfort of that existential void of uncertainty and vulnerability, we cling to identities that tell us who we are and what to do about it. So the victim identity is not the nicest of identities. It comes with perhaps many more disadvantages than advantages, but it still caters to our need to have an identity. And once we have identified as a victim, then it would only be natural that we spend all of our time talking about how we are an empath or how we have been emotionally abused, and that we spend also an inordinate amount of time sort of studying these abusers and these narcissists and all their traits and attitudes and likes and dislikes and tactics. So this is a quick video to simply raise awareness on the idea that victimhood as an identity can take very insidious and very hidden forms, about the fact that the victimhood identity can have a payoff, which would make us identify as a victim and stay stuck with the identity of a victim, as opposed to orienting our attention about what to do to heal ourselves. And also about the fact that identity in general has an even more insidious effect and even a bigger payoff, which is simply the reduction of uncertainty. The way to look around this, if you believe that this may be the case for you, or whether you doubt if that's happening, is imagine if you let go of all these videos about narcissism. Imagine if you let go of your identity as a victim or an empath and you simply want to heal your trauma and get on with your life. There may be real barriers within to live a life that is full, that is free and completely engaged. Those are the very barriers that get us in the in problems with disturbed people in the first place. And they are barriers that we may not be ready to resolve, hence clinging to a victim identity. So that's the general message for today. It's about keeping an eye out for the payoff of victim identity. And if you think that this is valuable content, I'm curious to hear what you have to say. So do share it in the comments section. And if you think that this content is valuable and that others may benefit from hearing it, then liking, sharing, and subscribing is always very motivating. And it helps with YouTube. So thanks for listening. And as usual, I'll be back with more. Cheerio.